Montana Territory, late spring of 1881. The sun was just cutting over the jagged peaks east of Helena when Ada Kerrigan stepped off the westbound freight wagon, her boots hitting the dirt like she meant never to go back. She clutched a carpet bag to her chest, fingers white around the handle, dress dusty from the road, hair pinned tight beneath a simple hat. Her sharp gray eyes scanned the small town not for opportunity, but for danger. She had not stopped running since Missouri, and she had no plans to stop now. But she was tired, so tired her bones ached. The child beside her, Oliver, was only 6, but he did not complain. He held her hand without question, his dark blonde curls limp from the ride, his eyes too watchful for someone his age. "We'll just get something to eat," Ada told him softly, crouching by his side. "Then we keep moving." He nodded once. He never asked where they were going. He had learned not to. A saloon sign creaked in the wind across the street, and a handful of shops flanked it: general store, smithy, a post office with peeling paint. Helena was busier than she liked, but she had no choice. She needed supplies, and the boy needed rest. They crossed the street, Ada's spine straight despite the weight of exhaustion. She was halfway to the store when a man stepped out of the livery barn, wiping his hands on a rag, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair tousled under a light layer of dust. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and he moved like the ground listened to him. Ada looked away quickly, pulling Oliver closer. She had dealt with enough men who thought a woman traveling alone was an invitation. But the cowboy noticed them. He stopped just short of the trough, his eyes landing on the boy first, then rising to Ada. His gaze was steady, not pushy, not curious, just quiet. "Your boy thirsty?" he asked. Ada tensed. "He's fine." The cowboy nodded once like he believed her. He turned back to his horse and said nothing else. She should have left it there. But something about the way he asked, like it mattered to him whether Oliver was thirsty or not, made her pause. "There's somewhere a woman can buy a loaf of bread?" she asked low. The cowboy looked back over his shoulder. "General store stocks it fresh every morning. Tell Mrs. Loring I sent you. She'll knock off the travel markup." Ada narrowed her eyes. "And who are you?" He wiped his hands again, then stepped toward her just enough to speak without raising his voice. "Levi Kessler. I run the livery. My name gets folks to mind their manners, that's all." Ada didn't thank him. She just nodded and moved on, Oliver trailing close. But the cowboy's name stuck in her head as she walked. Inside the store, the woman behind the counter gave her a cautious look until Ada mentioned Levi. Then she softened, even gave Oliver a peppermint stick. They ate behind the store, sitting on a crate under the sky. Ada tore the bread in half, gave the bigger piece to the boy. He ate quietly, legs swinging. "You think he's going to find us?" he asked after a long silence. Ada's chest tightened. "Not here. Not today." Oliver nodded, trusting her. She wished she deserved that. She had not planned to stay even one night, but Oliver's eyes were drooping before sundown. She couldn't keep dragging him through the night. She asked about a cheap room and was pointed toward a boarding house near the edge of town. The room was small and clean, and Ada sat in the chair by the window long after Oliver curled up on the cot. Her eyes scanned the street, her hand resting on the handle of the knife she kept tucked in her boot. She didn't sleep. In the morning, she sold her last trinket, a silver brooch that had once belonged to her mother, to buy oats and jerky. She had just stepped outside the store when she heard a voice. "You got a place to go?" Levi stood beside his horse, reins in hand. His shirt was unbuttoned at the throat, revealing sun-browned skin. His voice was gentle, but it had weight. Ada's hand twitched toward her skirt pocket. "I'm not looking for help." "I know," he said, calm. "But a woman alone with a child, it is a hard road. You got someone after you." She didn't answer. Levi nodded like that was answer enough. "You need work. There's a ranch 15 miles west. I can take you. Owner's a widow, hires women without asking questions." Ada looked toward the boy, then back at him. "Why would you help?" Levi looked her in the eyes. "Because someone helped me once, when I did not deserve it." She hesitated. She had walked away from every hand ever offered. But this one felt different. Not a trap. Just solid. "You got a family?" she asked. "No," he said simply. "Just this town, this land, and the animals under my care." Ada exhaled slow. "We'll ride with you. Just to the ranch." He nodded. "Be ready in 10. Levi had a calm horse for Oliver, and he rode beside them the whole way, speaking only when spoken to. The land opened wide as they left town. Hills rolled green with spring, the river flashing silver in the distance. Ada watched Levi's hands on the reins, steady and sure. His silence was not the same as others. He was not hiding. He was just not trying to impress. They reached the ranch by sundown. The widow took Ada in, gave her a bed and a promise of pay for honest work. Levi did not linger. He tipped his hat to Oliver, then to Ada. "If you need anything," he said, "send word." "Why?" Ada asked again. He looked at her then, serious. "Because I think you deserve to stop running. Start over in my name if you'd like." Her breath caught. "Why yours?" Levi's voice was low. "Because I would not mind seeing you again." He left before she could answer. That night, Ada sat on the porch steps while Oliver slept inside. The stars burned bright above the plains. She heard his words again, "Start over in my name if you'd like." She whispered it once, just to see how it felt. Kessler. The name did not scare her. It felt like something strong she could hold on to. The ranch sat quiet beneath the early summer sky, the wind moving soft through the wheat-colored grass. Ada tied her hair back with a strip of muslin before heading out to the chicken yard, the hem of her skirt damp from morning dew. She'd been at the ranch for nearly 3 weeks, and in that time, her shoulders had begun to ease from their constant hunch. Not from safety, she didn't believe in that, but from routine. Oliver helped the widow's grandson with the goats most mornings. Ada watched him from afar, the way he walked a little taller now, the way he laughed without checking her face first. He was settling. She didn't know if she was. The widow, Mrs. Pritchard, didn't speak much beyond what was needed. She gave Ada work, not pity, and that was a kind of mercy Ada hadn't known she needed. The chores were steady milking, tending to the garden, sewing repairs when the light held. Her hands stayed busy. Her mind wandered less. But every dusk, when the last of the light caught the hills, she'd find herself watching the road west. She told herself it was habit. She never admitted it might be hope. She didn't see Levi again until the end of June. He rode in slow, hat tipped against the sun, a small cart trailing behind him with bags of feed and 2 crates of nails. He greeted Mrs. Pritchard with a quiet nod, then stepped down and began unloading without being asked. Ada stayed near the barn, coiling rope onto a hook, her jaw tight. She hadn't expected him to come back. She certainly hadn't expected the way her chest ached a little at the sight of him. He didn't approach her, not right away. He helped the widow carry the supplies into the shed, then leaned against the post outside, dusting his gloves. "You get my message?" he asked when she finally came near. "I did," she said, brushing hay from her skirt. "Took me 2 days to believe it was meant for me." Levi shifted his weight, eyes steady on her. "I don't say things I don't mean." She nodded once. "It wasn't what I expected." He looked out toward the pasture, where Oliver ran with the goats, his laughter loud and full. "He looks better. He's sleeping through the night now," she said. "Mostly." Levi didn't comment on that. Instead, he eased away from the post and offered her a slip of folded paper. "What's this?" "List of folks in town hiring. Not just handwork, there's a seamstress looking for help, and the school's got an opening come fall." Ada unfolded it slowly. "You think I should leave here?" "No. I think you should have choices." She held the paper in both hands, the edges soft already from his handling. "You always this thoughtful with strangers?" "No," he said, voice low. "I don't reckon you're a stranger anymore." Her stomach turned warm, unexpected. Mrs. Pritchard called to him, then her wheelbarrow had thrown a wheel, and she needed help setting it right. He went without hesitation, lifting and hammering alongside her like he'd been born to fix things that broke. That evening, after supper, Ada found him sitting on the porch rail, the brim of his hat low over his eyes. She leaned against the post nearby, arms folded. "You always come this far just to deliver feed and job lists." "No," he said, "but that boy of yours deserves more than running. So do you. I don't know how to stop." "You don't have to yet," he said. "Just don't do it alone." The last of the sun slipped behind the trees. Levi stood, but didn't move to leave. "I'll be back through in a week," he said. "If you'd like to ride out with me, there's a fair in Westfall. Good music. Good pot." She didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't have a dress for fairs." He smiled soft. "You don't need one." She watched him ride off, Oliver asleep inside with the window cracked, the sound of frogs rising in the dark. She didn't sleep much that night, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't lie awake out of fear. The next morning, she asked Mrs. Pritchard if she could take a day off the following week. The widow didn't ask why. Ada began stitching a hem that afternoon, working slow, careful not to waste thread. She didn't know what would come of it all, but she'd said yes, and that was something. Dust rose from the wagon wheels as Ada stepped down into the packed earth of Westfall's main lane. Levi reached for Oliver's hand before the boy could dart toward the music drifting from the fairgrounds. A fiddle played lively nearby, joined by the soft thump of boots on raised boards. The scent of fried apples and roasted corn threaded the breeze. "Stay close," Ada said, adjusting the shawl at her shoulders. "And mind, Levi." She didn't look at the cowboy when she said it, but she felt the weight of his glance. Not pressing just there, steady as ever. "I'll buy him a penny sweet," Levi said. "He's earned it." Oliver grinned up at him, then darted ahead, careful to stay within reach. Ada followed slower. Her dress was plain but clean, with a new tuck at the waist she'd sewn herself. She kept her chin level, her hands clasped in front of her. "You ever been to a fair?" Levi asked, walking beside her. "Once. A preacher's wife in Independence took me when I was 14. I remember the lemonade more than the sermon." Levi's mouth pulled into something like a smile. "I remember a watermelon contest I lost to a girl who couldn't have weighed more than a sack of flour. She outate every man there." They stopped near a row of tents, where a man in suspenders juggled tin plates to the delight of a gathering crowd. Ada glanced toward the riderless horses tied at the rail. "Do you trust Oliver near the stock pens?" Levi's brow creased. "You don't." "I trust him," she said. "I don't trust strangers." He nodded once, then turned toward the boy, who was now watching a man carve birds from driftwood. "Let's take a walk," Levi said to her. "Just for a minute. He's safe here." Ada hesitated, then nodded. She followed him along the narrow path behind the tents, away from the crowds. The cottonwoods beyond cast mottled shadows over the dry grass. They stopped near a creek where water moved slow between stones. Levi crouched, picked up a flat rock, and turned it in his palm. "You ever skip stones?" "No," Ada said. "Didn't have much water where I grew up." He tossed the rock. It bounced twice before sinking. "You didn't flinch when you saw those riders pass us earlier," he said, not looking at her. "Most women would have." Ada crossed her arms. "I've seen worse." "I figured," he said. "But seeing worse doesn't mean you ought to live with it the rest of your life." She sat on a low stump, the bark brittle beneath her hand. "Some things follow you whether you want them to or not." Levi crouched again, elbows on his knees. "A man rode through Helena last week. Said he was looking for a woman and her son. Claimed she'd stolen something. Wouldn't give a name." Ada didn't speak. "I didn't tell him anything," Levi said. "Didn't like the way he asked." She looked at the water, where a dragonfly hovered. "I can't go to the law," she said. "He knows how to talk men into believing him. He wears a badge when it suits him." Levi's voice was quiet. "I figured it was something like that." "I didn't take anything," Ada said. "Not a coin, not a scrap. Just the boy. And he ain't his." "I didn't think he was," Levi said. Ada finally met his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I want to." "That's not a reason." "It is to me," he said, then added. "You and the boy you carry yourselves like you're waiting for something to fall apart. I don't like seeing that." She stood. "You don't know me." "Not yet," said Levi. "But I'd like to." Ada looked back toward the fair, where the lanterns were beginning to glow in the dusk. "If he comes here." "He won't find you," Levi said. "Not unless you want to be found." "I don't," she said. Levi straightened slowly. "Then let's make sure of it." They walked back in silence. Oliver ran to meet them, sticky with sugar and holding a carved whistle. "I saw a calf with a white face. Can we go see it again?" Ada nodded, smoothing his hair. "Just for a little while." As they walked toward the livestock pens, Levi moved beside her again. "There's land outside Helena North Ridge. Belongs to a rancher I know. He's old, no kin left. Looking to lease part of it to someone who'll keep it alive." Ada didn't look at him. "And you think that someone is me?" "I think you know how to survive," Levi said. "And I think maybe you're ready to stop just surviving." She said nothing as they reached the fence, where the calf blinked sleepily in the straw. Oliver leaned over the rail, wide-eyed. Ada watched him for a moment, then turned to Levi. "I need someone to help fix a roof." Levi's voice was low. "I'm good with roofs." She glanced at him, then looked away. "I'll think on it." "All right," he said. The wind shifted. Somewhere, a fiddle began again. She watched the boy, then the hills beyond. "I might be ready," she said. Levi didn't answer. He just stood beside her, quiet, his presence like a promise not spoken but understood. The first frost had not yet taken the grass when Ada stepped onto the porch of the clapboard house nestled in the fold of the north ridge. The roof had been mended, the chimney patched, and the shutters hung straight. Levi leaned against the porch post, arms crossed, hat low against the late afternoon sun. He'd driven the last of the nails that morning, his shirt sleeves rolled and collar undone, the scent of pine pitch still faint on his skin. Oliver stood in the yard, chasing a woolly caterpillar with a twig, his cheeks pink from the climb up the hill. Mrs. Pritchard had sent the boy off with a sack of hard biscuits and a wool scarf, promising to keep a letter waiting should Ada ever want to write. "You've got a good stretch of land here," Levi said, nodding toward the slope behind the house. "Soil's lighter than the valley, but it'll hold carrots. Onions too if you plant before the chill sets in." Ada rested a hand on the porch rail. "You sound like you've done this before." "I've patched fence for most of the ranches between here and Reed Point," he said. "Watched enough to know what takes root and what doesn't." She looked toward the shed, where the wheelbarrow he'd built from salvage would stood waiting. "You're not planning to disappear now that the work's done, are you?" Levi's eyes met hers, steady. "Only if you ask me to." "I'm not," she said. "But I don't know what this is supposed to be." He stepped down into the grass, boots soft in the dry stalks. "It's whatever you want it to be. I didn't bring you up here just to leave you on your own." She watched him, the line of his jaw, the quiet behind his words. "I don't need saving," she said. "I know that," Levi said. "You never did." Oliver called out, holding up the caterpillar like a trophy. Ada waved back, then turned toward Levi again. "He's never had a place that was just his." "He does now," Levi said. They stood there for a while, the wind moving through the cottonwoods behind the house, the sun slipping lower behind the ridge. Levi reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thin parcel wrapped in oilskin. "I brought something." Ada raised an eyebrow. "You're not planning to give me a mule, are you?" "Not this time," he said, handing her the package. "Open it." Inside was a small leather-bound ledger, the edges still stiff from being new. A pencil was looped through a bit of string tied to its spine. "For keeping track of seed, purchases, whatever you need," Levi said. "You said once you never had much water growing up. Figured maybe you hadn't had many books either." She turned the pages slowly, fingers brushing the paper. "I never learned to write proper." "I can teach you," he said, voice low. "If you want. Don't have to be fancy, just enough to run a place like this." Ada closed the book, holding it to her chest. "You keep showing up like you mean to stay." "I do," he said. "You're not a man who says more than he needs to." "No," Levi said. "But I meant that thing I said before. About starting over in my name." Ada looked toward the field where the light was turning gold. "That wasn't just a kindness, was it?" "No," he said. "It wasn't." She stepped down from the porch, boots crunching dry leaves. "You sure about this?" "I've got nothing behind me but ash and bruises." "I'm not looking behind you," Levi said. "I'm looking at now." Ada's eyes lingered on his face, taking in the quiet truth of him. "You'd make room for us here?" she asked. "I already have," he said. The silence stretched long between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything that hadn't needed saying until now. "I'll need help putting in a stove," she said, voice softer. "I'll bring my tools tomorrow." Ada turned toward the house, then back. "You'll stay for supper?" "If you ask." "I'm asking," she said. Levi followed her up the steps, the sun on their backs, the air cool with promise. Inside, the hearth waited unlit, the kettle empty, but the space felt full, as if something long missing had finally found its place. The days shortened as the ridge settled into autumn. Wind came sharper through the trees, and the air carried the scent of wood smoke and earth long turned. Ada moved through the house with sleeves rolled and hair pinned high, sleeves smudged from hearth ash and flour. She'd never managed a home before, only endured the ones others kept, but the rhythm of this place had begun to shape itself around her hands. Levi had taken to arriving just after sunup, carrying a sack of oats or a tin of nails, sometimes nothing at all. He never knocked, just stepped to the porch with a quiet greeting and waited until she invited him in. He never assumed. On a Tuesday, when the frost clung stubborn to the windows, Ada found him standing near the barn with a length of rope slung over one shoulder. Oliver was collecting wind-fallen apples near the fence line, his breath visible in the morning air. Levi glanced up as she approached. "That mare of yours favors her left leg," he said. "I'll wrap it before it stiffens." "She's older than she lets on," Ada replied, tugging her shawl tighter. "Bit like me." Levi's eyes didn't waver. "You don't strike me as old. You strike me as someone who's lasted." She looked toward the pasture. "I didn't think I'd have anything better than lasting." "You do now?" Ada exhaled through her nose, then turned to him. "You still think I ought to take your name?" "I think it's yours already," he said. "You just haven't said it out loud." His words didn't come fast, but they never needed to. She studied the man before her, his collar still damp with dew, his boots worn at the heel, the quiet steadiness in him that had never once asked her to be anything other than herself. "I don't want a wedding dress or a preacher's fuss," she said. "I figured you wouldn't," Levi said. "But I'd stand beside you, any way you choose." She nodded once. "I want it simple. Just the three of us. No one else." "You tell me when," he said. They married the following week, just after midday, under the wide sky behind the house. The wind moved gentle through the last of the yellowed grass, and the man from the post office, an old friend of Levi's, read the words with a voice worn from tobacco. Oliver stood between them, holding a sprig of dried sage he'd picked from the ridge that morning. After, they didn't celebrate with cake or dancing. Ada made stew from the last of the summer squash, and Levi brought in 2 bundles of kindling. They ate by the hearth while wind howled low against the shutters, and Oliver curled up in the corner with his carved whistle wrapped in a scrap of wool. "I never thought I'd have a place that held quiet like this," Ada said, her voice soft. Levi leaned back in his chair, legs stretched before him. "You made it quiet." "I made it livable," she said. "You made it feel like home." Later, when Oliver had gone to sleep, Ada stood at the window, watching the trees bend. Levi came behind her, his hands resting at her waist, warm through the cotton. "Do you ever miss wandering?" she asked. "Not once," he said. "Not since you." She turned in his arms, her hands resting at his chest, and for a long moment, they said nothing. No vows, no declarations, just breath shared in the space between them, the peace hard-earned and fully theirs. Years passed quiet as snow. The garden grew fuller each spring. Ada planted beans along the fence and taught Oliver how to mark the rows with twine. He grew into his limbs like a sapling reaching for sun, strong and even-tempered, with a love for mending things that matched Levi's. Neighbors came sometimes, for eggs or advice about soil. Ada didn't flinch when they knocked. She even offered coffee if they lingered. No one asked questions she couldn't answer. Levi kept to his quiet ways, fixing fence posts and shoeing horses for nearby ranches. But he always came home before the light slipped too low. Supper never waited long. He and Ada shared the work, her hands in the dough, his splitting wood or straightening shelves. They never needed more than that. One summer afternoon, Ada sat on the porch mending a tear in Levi's shirt while he shaped a new yoke for the oxen. Oliver, nearly grown now, led 2 kids into the pen, laughing as one nipped at his heel. The scent of sun-warmed pine drifted through the air. Levi looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "You ever think we'd have this?" Ada threaded her needle slow, the sun catching the silver at her temples. "I didn't know it was possible." "Not back then. And now." She looked at the land sloping down into the valley, the trees bending in the breeze, the boy she had saved standing tall and full of light. "Now I can't imagine anything else." Levi rose, walking to her side, one hand resting on the back of her chair. She reached for his fingers, twining them with hers. They sat like that until the sun dipped behind the ridge, the sky streaked with gold, the house behind them warm with bread rising and a kettle just beginning to hum. And they never ran again. There was no need. Everything they needed was already here. Their names were carved side by side into the gatepost the following spring, just beneath the ridge line. Kessler family, St. 1881. Home, finally. Always.